The United States is a very critical economic juncture, and the imposition of sweeping tariff under the Trump administration is a move that could escalate the nation towards a recession. These tariffs, which target major trading partners like India, China, the European Union, and Japan, are intended to address trade imbalances and domestic manufacturing concerns. However, history and economic theory suggest that these particular policies often lead to unintended consequences, including economic slowdown, rising consumer costs, and disruption to global supply chain. The question we must ask is, can the US economy sustain these tariffs without significant negative impact? Well, the fundamental issue with tariff is that while they are designed to protect domestic industries, they often backfire by increasing production costs for businesses that rely on imported goods. Higher tariffs means that American companies must pay really extra for raw material, components, and finished products, leading to increased prices for the consumers. Inflationary pressure grows as businesses pass these particular costs on the consumer, reducing overall purchasing power. As prices rise, demand falls, potentially leading to decreased production, job losses, and a slowdown in economic growth. Trade wars historically has had severe economic consequences. Let me give you an example. The Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act of 1930s was a key factor in exacerbating the Great Depression. Countries retaliated with their own tariff, leading to collapse in international trade. While the current situation is very different in scale and context, the underlying principle remains the same. When countries impose tariff on each other, global trade contracts, supply chains get disrupted, and economic uncertainty rises. The United States economy is deeply interconnected with global market, and isolating itself through these kind of policies risk reducing competitiveness and weaken the economic growth. One of the most immediate impacts of these tariffs is on American businesses that depends on the export. When the US imposes tariff, other nations respond with countermeasures, making it really hard for American goods to compete abroad. India, for example, has already hinted at rising tariff on key US exports such as agricultural products and manufactured goods. Similarly, the European Union is considering retaliatory tariff, and that too on American automobiles and technology products. Now, this cycle of retaliatory tariff can lead to declining exports, reduced corporate revenue, and potential layoffs in affected industries. Moreover, the global supply chain is not as simple as manufacturing everything domestically. Many American industries, particularly in technology, automotive, and pharmaceuticals, rely on imported components. A higher tariff on these goods make it costlier to produce finished products in the US, ultimately making American businesses less competitive globally. Large multinational companies may respond by shifting production to other countries where tariffs are not as restrictive, leading to job losses at home. Another example, companies like Apple, which depends on supply chain in China and India, could see their cost rise significantly, forcing them to either absorb the losses or pass cost on the consumers. Inflation is another key concern, and that too a big one. With higher import costs, consumer prices will rise. The Federal Reserve may respond by rising interest rate to curb inflation, which could further dampen economic activities. Higher borrowing costs could slow down business investment and consumer spending, two key drivers of economic growth. If wages do not rise at the same pace as inflation, household disposable income will shrink, leading to a decline in living standards and overall economic confidence. Financial markets have already begun to react negatively to these tariff policies. Investors dislike the uncertainty, and trade war introduce significant unpredictability into the market. Also, the stock market thrives on stability and growth projection, both of which become really difficult to maintain in a trade environment. Well, the major downturn in these policies following the tariff announcement reflects growing investor anxiety about the potential economic slowdown. Additionally, the multinational corporation with global operations may look for other options by shifting their supply chain and investments elsewhere, reducing economic activity within the US. It is also worth considering the broader geopolitical implications of the tariff. Policies do not just impact economic relationship, they also influence diplomatic ties. Countries that once saw the US as a reliable trade partner may seek alternative alliances, weakening America's position in global trade negotiation. China, for example, has been actively expanding its influence through the trade agreement with Europe, Africa, and Asia, positioning itself as a more stable economic partner. So, if the US continues down this path of economic isolation, it risks the leadership position in global trade to the competitors. While some argue that tariffs protect American jobs and industries, the reality is that they often create more harm than good in the long term. Short term gains for select industries come at an expense of broader economic stability. A sustainable approach to trade policies would involve negotiating fair trade agreement, investing in domestic industries without any repercussions, and fostering an environment where American businesses can compete on the global stage, and that too without relying on artificial protection. Instead of imposing blanket tariff, a more strategic approach, targeting specific trade abuses while maintaining overall open trade policies, would have been wiser path forward. Well, the road ahead for the US economy remains uncertain. If these tariffs remain in place and escalate further, they could push the economy towards recession by slowing down the growth of the country, increasing inflation, and reducing global trade participation. Policymakers must carefully consider the long-term consequences of these measures and whether the short-term gains are worth the risk of the prolonged economic downturn or not. In an interconnected world, these kind of policies rarely lead to any prosperity. The challenge now is for the US to balance its trade objectives with economic realities, ensuring that America remains competitive and resilient, and that too in the face of global challenge.